Hi, everyone. David will be here very shortly. He's just running a few minutes late. Where is everybody? Mhm. Hey there. Okay, everyone. David's here. Right there.
Hear me?
There you are.
But can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's what I was waiting for. Okay. I've been pouring concrete all day on the hillside, so. Okay, so we are talking about the Pleiades.
You are live. I'm gonna do this thing so that you don't need me.
Yeah, there's my studio. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me just get my notes here ready. Yeah, tonight we're talking about the Pleiades, the alignment to the sun, and just hang on a second here.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just getting ready.
I can hear you. Here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Giving you the spotlight.
There seems to be an audio problem. I'm not sure what it is. Okay, I'm just getting ready, everybody. It's only 5:03, and just gonna get my slides. So what's happening is we have the ascension date of Jesus. This is a huge opener for me, and I just wanted to share it with everybody. Is we've seen what's been going on with the sun. We know that I'm just looking for Jesus's ascension day. Here we go. 27 to 3rd. May 26th. Okay, so this is, I'm going to go to screenshot, share screen. Window. Entire screen window. How come I don't see it when I just saw? Oh yeah, here we go.
Is it letting you share?
Yeah, it's letting me share. I'm just trying to. There we go. Okay. So Jesus's ascension day is 40 days after Easter. But on a lunar calendar, juxtaposed against the solar calendar, it looks like a giant wave like this. And a giant wave like that, you'll see in a second. I'll share this.
It's going to be one of those.
Can you see this? Jesus' Ascension Day on the calendar of the lunar juxtaposed to the solar calendar between 2017 and 2031. And what happens on a lunar calendar, it happens with Easter, it happens with Yom Kippur, it happens with the Ascension Day. Anything that's on the lunar calendar, any special date on the lunar calendar over a course of 12 years will return to any original marking date you start at. But we can see right here that the ascension date of Jesus, and again, you have two solar markers for the beginning of your year. You have December 25th, which is 3 days after the winter solstice on the current calendar. And you have January 7th, which is 3 days after winter perihelion. And both of those start dates are actually harmonics. So it gives you a little bit of a window to determine the harmony versus the position of the date you're looking for. In this case, we're looking for the ascension date of Jesus. And this particular year, I mean, our current year is 2024. And this is going to be on the Eastern Orthodox calendar, because I can see the date is up above June 12th here, right? Whereas 2023, it was down around May 26th, right here, right? And you'll notice if I count my solar year from January 7th, which is 3 days after winter perihelion, and winter perihelion changes by as much as a day and a half every single year. It's not exactly the same. So that means that this window of May 26th this year, but again, if we can see in 2018, the Ascension Day of Jesus was actually May 17th. But I'll show you in a second here. So I'll go to stop sharing. And then we come to, okay, I'll Google this. I want you to see this because you're going to see how Pleiades and the sun are actually in this window of harmonic on the ascension date of Jesus. And the Pleiadian part of that is what really is a huge revelation. And you'll understand why. Because in the Gospel of Judas, which was, again, one of the most recently discovered lost Gospels is the Gospel of Judas. And in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus refers to the stars as being these extremely high points in the heavens that very few souls will ever see, according to what he's telling Judas. But let's just look at this. So we go to let's go to present, share screen. Let's just go to window, Google. Okay, watch. So we type in Jesus' ascension date. And remember, he ascends 40 days after Easter. So he's appearing in his resurrected form for 40 days, a 40-day window. And it's almost like he has to complete and go on his ascension on that date. So if I scroll down here, I don't see the dates in this one. Hang on a second. Go back to Google. Jesus says, the cat's because I'm in Britannica. Here we go. It's going to show me the dates. Jesus Ascension dates. Okay, so this year, it was Thursday, May the 9th. And what happened this year on May the 9th is right when the big solar flares started. But not only Feast of Ascension, here we go. You can see this right here. In 2023, it was May 18th. 2024, May 9th. 2025 will be May 29th, 2026, May 14th. And you see, that's what I'm talking about. It goes up and down like a sine wave, but it will return to what you would call the ascension date of Jesus on the solar calendar, which is our calendar. We are on the solar calendar. And you'll see this in a second. why this is so special with what just happened. Because for Jesus to ascend in harmony, he actually ascends in perfect harmony to planet 139, which again I presented about planet 139 previously, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but let me just show you for a quick recap. First, present, share screen, window. Let's go back to this. Go back to my chart. So you see my months are on the left, my years are underneath, and you see how every year the sine wave like action of the movement of the ascension date of Jesus would be similar to the day of Easter, because they both are moving up and down on a lunar calendar. Notice that the way we celebrate Christmas, December 25th is really the beginning of a solar year. It's the beginning of a solar year. And there's two dates that begin a solar year. Christmas for the Western churches is December 25th, and Christmas for the Eastern Orthodox churches can be January 6th and January 7th, depending on which country of the Orthodox is celebrating. And what's interesting about both of these dates is they're both beginnings of solar years. And that's just absolute mathematical proof that this is not the birth date of Jesus. This is the beginning of the solar year. And you count in from these dates. So if I count December 25th in 139 days, which corresponds to one orbit of planet 139, which is a hypothetical heaven, interdimensional planet, you come to May 12th, and that's on our current calendar. Now remember, the Mother Mary appeared to the three children at Fatima on May 13th, 1917. And you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see that she's in perfect harmony to one orbit of planet 139. And if I go January 7th to May 26th, I'm in one orbit of planet 139. Now notice May 12th is the bottom of Jesus's ascension day on this juxtaposing solar to lunar calendar, because you can look at the bottom of my chart as May 13th. And the top of my chart, which is the most extreme point, is up around June 8th to the 12th. And what you notice, okay, now just notice this for a second, because now we're going to go back to Jesus's ascension date again on the two churches. So I come here, and then we're gonna make the Pleiadian connection and what just happened with the solar flares in a minute. So now we go to present Feast of the Ascension. Okay, here we go. Now watch. Look at those two dates I showed you in my calendar. Notice that we have in 2024, the Eastern Church is June 13th. That's the top of my chart. The Western Church is May 9th, the bottom of my chart. You see that? And then in 2025, the Western Church moves up to May 29th. And the Eastern Church is the same in 2025. Look at that. And then in 2026, the Eastern Church is May 21st, and the Western Church is May 14th, right? And they're both doing this dance, and they come together in the crossover next year. So they're actually both correct, because both of them have start dates in the 2 points of the solar year. One is winter perihelion, and which is the Eastern Church, and one is December 25th, which is the beginning of the new sun for the Western churches. So that's Catholic and Western churches. But what it really is the beginning of the solar year, which is where you count your harmonies in. And of course, when you realize what's actually happening right now, why this year is so incredibly special is, okay, now I have to find, here we go. Pull this up. Now we go to, again, share screen. This is really, really incredible. Window, here we go. So you see from this solar chronograph, according to when the churches tried to consolidate Easter to one day on the solar calendar, which they realize is really the truth. There really is one day for Easter. It shouldn't be going up and down like that. The real day for the ascension of Jesus would be about May 19th to the 21st. And what happens here on the sun, this is 2024, May 20th. And you notice the Pleiades are right at the top. They're just in perfect alignment between Earth and the sun, and you have Pleiades. And this is Jesus' Ascension Day, and this huge explosion from our massive solar flare sends the biggest shock wave to the planet Venus because it's far side. It's on the far side of the sun. So what do we know about Venus is Jesus declared in the book of Revelation that he is the morning star. So he's declaring Venus is his. And which means there was a great misunderstanding in the Old Testament where it's written in I think it's Isaiah that Lucifer falls from the morning star. So people interpret that as Venus is bad. No, that means God has claimed Venus and Lucifer's kicked out. And where was Lucifer kicked out? Lucifer was kicked out to Earth, was not allowed to preside in Venus. So here we have Jesus' Ascension Day with Pleiades aligned, and then we have the massive solar flare kicks into Venus, which creates a huge magnetic portal between Earth, the sun, and Pleiades and Venus, all three. So you have Earth, the sun, Venus, and Pleiades, because we're on the other side of this picture, aren't we? We're on this side of it. And that is just remarkable timing that this would be Jesus's birthday. And why does that matter so much? It matters because what happens in the Gospel of Judas is confirmed. It's confirmed that Jesus may even be, I hate to say this, but to people who are not ready for this, but he may even be Pleiadian. Because let's go back. Now, if I go back in time.
Okay, I don't know how you made that stretch.
Well, no, because he's ascending in a perfect arrow between Earth, the sun, and Venus and Pleiades. Right? So you just draw the line. Like, where is he ascending to? I mean, I could say astrologically, if I draw the arrow, he's going Earth to the sun, to Venus, because remember, Venus is on the other side of the sun, because that's why the solar flare hit it, because it's far side, and then Pleiades. That's your arrow, because Jesus makes that arrow in the Gospel of Judas. And of course, the church was banning if you study the history of the Christian church, I mean, the first Christians are nothing like, and the first Christians are the apostles, are the 72 disciples. Remember, disciples are not apostles. The Gospel of Judas. Now, you really have to read this because the Gospel of Judas changes everything. It absolutely changes everything about what we see as Judas's role. Because when you understand, okay, so I presented this last time. I presented that there's Fatima 1 and Fatima 2. And Fatima 1 was October 13th, 1917 is 2 orbits of planet 179, which gives us 278 days, because 139 times 2 is 278. Now, the word heaven in the Bible, in the New Testament, appears 278 times. You see, that's code. That's code for exactly what I'm talking about. And so, which everybody missed, because they don't know what planet 139 is, because it's a hidden dimensional planet. So then you have the miracle of the sun. The Mother Mary appears to the 3 children at May 13th, which is 1 orbit of 139, starting from December 25th or January 7th. It changes every year a little bit. It's really interesting. And remember how I just showed you the Eastern Church and the Western Church, every so many years, they have the Ascension date and Easter on the same date, and then they separate, and then they come back together, right? So that's why you have a little bit of latitude. So why does the Mother Mary appear to the 3 children at Fatima, one orbit of 139, and the miracle of the sun is 139 times 2, which is the number of days the word heaven appears in the New Testament, in the original Greek, which is what it was written in. It was not written in English, it was written in Greek. Okay, so they'll just hold that thought. Now, when you come to the Gospel of Judas, I'm going to show you this. I mean, I've read this so many times, and of course, you get into different translations, and it's interesting. The Gospel of Judas, okay, this secret message of the judgment of Jesus spoke with Judas Iscariot over a period of 8 days, 3 days before he celebrated Passover, right? And of course, Passover is the same. It's on the lunar calendar. And in 2024, it was April 22nd. Right? So again, I can put Passover on a lunar chart compared to solar, and it will do the same thing. And again, I can tell you where the planets are, because if I go back to the time of Jesus on his ascension date, the date on the calendar will be about 13 to 16 days earlier than it is now, but the Pleiades will still be aligned behind the sun. They will, on his ascension. This isn't just this year. It's just that our calendar migrates due to an error in the perfection of the way we count time, which again I've demonstrated before in a previous episode. So this is where, in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus is basically setting Judas up to turn him in on purpose, because it all has to be perfectly timed. Hang on a second. Let me just switch this off for a second. Why does it have to be perfectly timed? Because remember, Fatima 1 is 1917, October 13th. Fatima 2 was witnessed by Pope Pius XII. The same phenomenon of the sun was 33 years later in 1950. Now, what are 33 years apart? The Star of Bethlehem and the eclipse that occurred at the moment Jesus died at the age of 33. They're both 33 years apart. And guess what happens with all the inner planets? They come in pairs. So you get pairs of Mercury transits, pairs of Venus transits, which are a number of years apart every time. So notice the correlation. The Star of Bethlehem is not the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, because that wasn't bright enough. We all saw that. It was the arrival of planet 139, and its double transits are 33 years apart. It's proven that the 3 hours of darkness on the cross was not caused by a lunar solar eclipse. There was no eclipse anywhere near that time period to match when Jesus was crucified. So there has to be an unknown planet that's corresponding to that moment. Now, what we didn't see is the alignment of Pleiades in the arrow between Earth, Venus, and the sun. So let me just pull up before we go to the Gospel of Judas, and this gets really clear in Judas' gospel. And the reason I'm interested in these gospels that the church rejected is because they actually existed. They're not fabrications. They were circulating around the empire, and they were recorded by the original disciples and or apostles. The church removed over 85% of the total testimony that was recorded and only gave us 15% in the Bible. I'm interested in what was thrown away. Okay, and I'm also interested in why, because I want the truth. I don't want a lie. I want the truth. And so we're seeing proof in the solar system right now of this alignment to Pleiades, and this alignment to Pleiades is in the Gospel of Judas, but it's hidden. It's written in a language. They don't use the word Pleiades. They use the word stars, and there's a particular cluster of stars in Judas that I believe must be the Pleiades. Okay, so when you see this, Judas he has to turn Jesus in by Jesus's instructions, which he's getting from God, that he has to be crucified at this time because the eclipse of planet 139 is going to happen on that day. And if he misses that day, it won't be on time. It will be out of time. So here we go. This is all going to be in my movie, by the way. Very well illustrated, because I'm making a movie, an actual documentary film about this. I hope will be ready by Christmas. So here we go. Here's my chart again. So again, this all comes from my wife, Crystal, who after she died, first she spoke out my name, the exact number of days from the moment she died that it takes Venus to go sunrise to sunset, which is actually 243 Earth days, whereas Venus takes just under 225 days to go around the sun. Then she called out my name at 591 days after she died, and 591 days divided by the golden ratio gave me the exact orbital period for Earth for 1 year, accurate to 99.9999%. Divided by the golden ratio again gave me Venus, and then divided by the golden ratio again gave me this mythical planet 139.51. Divided by the golden ratio again gave me Mercury, and so on. So that's how I was able to create this chart of 9 to 10 planets above what I'm calling the firmament and the 9 visible planets below. And Dante, the Italian poet, when he ascends in his visions that he records in poems through the 9 levels of heaven, when he gets to the top, which would be the equivalent of Neptune, which did not exist for astronomers at the time of Dante, God shows him there are 9 more planets above that you can't see, that are super high planets that are for the very, very elect. And then, which confirms my model, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 above the line. And it's all done in this mathematical formula of 591 to the golden ratio. So what I'm saying is that caused the miracle of the sun at Fatima is this ascension planet 139, because it matches all the most holy dates in our existence. So with that, you come to the Gospel of Judas, which is what I want to show you, because once you get this, that what Jesus is saying here, because he's actually saying, I'm just going to pull this up, that Judas is doing the worst thing, because he's going to be stoned and ridiculed, but what he's actually doing gives him the perspective of being able to see what the other apostles can't see, right? So I'm not going to read the whole Gospel of Judas to you, but I'm going to show you certain sections, and you should really, really read this again, because one of the things that Jesus says in Judas is that we are all of us, from a star that we will return to when we die. That means we have a personal star that we are from. And then, so you could deduct from that Jesus is saying the same thing about himself, in that he is from a star. And there's all these, like right here, I can see, and when I'm just skimming this, because truly I say to you, the pillar of fire will fall quickly, and that generation won't be moved by the stars. So the thing about the Gospel of Judas is there's these constant references to the stars. And I'm looking for this one or two sections in here that
Have
are
you done
real.
a study on all the references to stars in the Old Testament?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've looked at the quotations. Pleiades is in Job 9:9, by the way. Okay, so here we go. Jesus answered and said, "Your star has led you astray, Judas, and that no person of mortal birth is worthy to enter the house you've seen." Because what he's showing Judas here, Judas has a vision, and he's able to see something that is too high for him. Jesus is saying, "It's here we go, right up here." Jesus said, "The souls of every human generation will die. However, when these people have completed the time of the kingdom of the Spirit leaves them, their bodies will die, but their souls will live, and they will be taken up." Judas said, "What does the rest of the human generations do?" Jesus says, "It is not possible to sow on rock and harvest its fruit. In the same way, it's not possible to sow on the defiled race alongside the perishable wisdom and the hand which created mortal humans, so that their souls may go up to the realms above. Truly, I say to you, no ruler, angel, or power will be able to see the places of this great holy generation." So Jesus is talking about something that even is beyond the reach of the angels. Judas said, "Master, just as you listened to all of them, now listen to me too, because I just had a vision." But Jesus laughed when he heard this, and he said to him, "Why are you all worked up, you 13th demon? But speak up, and I'll bear with you." Judas said to him, "In the vision I saw myself, the 12 disciples are stoning me and chasing me rapidly." You see, because Judas was given the dirty deed of turning Jesus in by Jesus's instructions, because it had to be perfectly timed. "And I also came to the place where I had followed you. I saw a house in this place, and my eyes couldn't measure its size. Great people surrounded it, and that house and the roof of greenery in the middle of the house was a crowd. Master, take me in with these people." And Jesus said, "Your star has led you astray." What he means by that is earlier in the gospel, he said that we all have basically a home-based star, and we go there, we return there. "And that no person of moral birth is worthy to enter the house you've seen, because that place is reserved for those who are holy. Neither the sun nor the moon will rule there." Notice what he's saying. This is a higher dimensional solar system, most likely. "But those who are holy will always stand in the realm with the holy angels. Look, I've told you the mysteries of the kingdom, and I've taught you about the error of the stars." Again, this is really sad here, because the text is damaged after "I've told you about the error of the stars." And in the Greek, the word for star and planet can be interchangeably the same. So we don't know if Jesus is referring to a fixed star or a non-fixed star, planet or actual star. Jesus said to him, "Come, let me tell you about the holy generation, not so that you'll go there, but you'll grieve much when you see the kingdom in all its generation." But Jesus is kind of mocking him, saying that he's not really ready to go that high. Yet Judas has seen this high. He's seen this higher dimensional order that is beyond the known Ptolemistic view of the known planets. So, which again are referred to as heavens. Jesus said, "Come, and I'll teach about the mysteries that no human will see, because there exists a great and boundless realm whose horizons no angelic generation is seen." Now, it's important here on this point, because Dante is told the same thing. He's saying that no angelic beings have seen these 9 higher planets, that humans actually have the capacity to go higher than the angels. And it says, "An luminous cloud appeared there, and the Spirit said, 'Let the angel come unto me and attend me.' And a great angel, the self-begotten, the God of the light, emerged from the cloud. And I'm just trying to find, again, I don't want to read this whole thing because it's very, very long. And I'm trying to find the point about the stars. Here you go. And all the realms of the heavens with their firmaments. Again, heaven, remember, the word heaven in the New Testament appears 278 times. And the word heaven in the Greek is Uranos, which is what we named the planet Uranus from. But Uranos is actually in the Greek a god of creation. So that needs a lot of clarification why from the original Greek Bible and New Testament, the word for heaven actually was a Greek god. I'm just reading through here really, really quick. I mean, there we go. 12 angels in the heavens, each of them receiving a portion of the heavens. Oh yeah, this gets into the Gnostic. This gets into the Gnostic creation of the ruler of the demigods. And we come to, here we go. Jesus said, truly I say to you, the stars complete all these things. There's another reference to the stars. Again, there are different translations of Judas, and I've gone through all of them, and there are subtle little differences between them, but the references to the stars and that we're from stars are constant. And then there's a reference which I can't see just scanning this, to the cluster of stars that Jesus refers to, an actual cluster. I believe the cluster had 6 stars. I've noticed over the years in these gospels that the editors and the translators throughout the years, they keep changing the text. Just little things. They just keep, if you go to the original printed version and then you go to somebody else, you'll see examples of even the Gospel of Thomas is translated by 3 or 4 different massive scholars at universities. And if you read one translation versus another, you'll see some very significant differences. And the reason those differences appear is because in the Greek, a particular word can go 2 ways and even 3 ways, and they have to choose which way interpretation of that.
What context is best?
Yeah, and they all have different ideas about it. And again, that's one of the problems with myth, right? Is that when we look at scripture and we're relying on it as evidence, and scripture is not really evidence, it's testimony. And when you see disagreements in that testimony, it gets really confusing to know what really is the truth. But of course, in the traditional Bible, Judas commits suicide. He kills him. He hangs himself. And of course, there's even different interpretations of his death, believe it or not. Some are, again, you can see in reference in the Gospel of Judas that he would be stoned to death. And that's more likely because even the apostle, the brother of Jesus, James, who led the very first actual church in Jerusalem, which is the beginning of an Orthodox church, there was only the Gospel of Matthew in the beginning. The other Gospels hadn't even emerged yet. And James used the Talmud, and he preached for 30 years, which is a very long time. And then he was thrown from the top of the temple, and he didn't die, and he was then stoned to death by the Romans. So the point is, it's very unlikely that Judas actually committed suicide. But what Jesus shares with Judas in this vision, I know it very well because I've read it so many times. When you're reading different translations and you're scanning it with your eyes, you're going to miss so much. But in the beginning, Jesus tells the apostles that none of you dare look at me in the eye. And he doesn't mean that in a demeaning way. He's saying that his vibration is too powerful, that none of you can look at me. And he's daring, this is in the beginning of Judas. He's
Is he
daring
referring to his third eye?
No, he's referring to the radiance that he is. And this is the way it was when I met him. You can't look at him when he's transfigured in his halo, and you can't look. He's too holy and powerful. You lower your gaze. It's a spontaneous humility. It's not like a ritualistic humility. He's too powerful to look at, so you look down. And that's what most translators of Judas are missing. They actually, what Jesus is saying is none of the apostles could look at him except for Judas. But Judas could only look for a brief second, and then he had to look down. And that's in the beginning of the gospel. Everyone would miss that because they don't know that Jesus must be transfigured in this moment in his extremely illuminated body. But then, because Judas can look, Jesus shows him the mysteries of the stars. The mysteries of the stars. And he's saying that we are from a star, and to it we return as if we're not all from the same star. So again, when you see Jesus's ascension date lining up and you point the arrow and it leads to the Pleiades, I don't know what that means. All I can say, it becomes mythic. It becomes a mythic arrow. The Pleiades, according to astronomers, because we're going to go into a little bit of Billy Myers stuff next for the last 15 minutes or so, is that they're young stars. Our sun is about a 4.5 billion year old sun, and the stars in Pleiades can range between 400 and 700 million years old. They're very young. But what I say is they're God's newest technology, God's newest creation. So therefore, they're more perfect because we're a very old star. Our star is incredibly old at 4.5 billion years. So we're the stuff, our bodies and our brains are the stuff of a really old, I would say more outdated in the creation. It's outdated in the creation. So therefore, if beings are from the Pleiades, and if you read Job 9:9, that God created the Pleiades and Orion's belt. See, let me just pull up Job 9:9 here for a second so you can see this, because there are people who believe that everything is basically evil. Okay, it says right here, God is the maker of the bear, which is the bear constellation, Ursa Major, and Orion, and Pleiades, and the constellations of the south. Now, I mean, I believe the real God, the supreme God, is the creator of everything. So, but to put the name of Orion in the Pleiades and the constellations of the south would probably, because if you know your grand gallery, it's Sirius, Orion, and Pleiades are all in a perfect row. They're all.
It's almost like a personification too.
Right. It's making it personal. And of course, the maker of the bear, the great bear, I mean, if you look to the north, you have Ursa Major, which is also, it's not like a cluster. See, the bear has like 7 also major stars in it. And Pleiades is really 6 to the naked eye. And in the earliest translation of Judas, Jesus is describing what appears to be a cluster of 6 stars. And again, I have to scrub each version of Judas because some translators will leave that out, and it's really brutal that they do this. But again, this is in the book of Job, who was a prophet, personalizing the creation of Pleiades and Orion and the bear and probably Sirius in the south, right? Because when you see Sirius in the wintertime from the northern hemisphere. It appears in the southern horizon. Of course, I can only speculate because when you go, okay, if I go to Young's literal translation, and I should probably go to share screen here. I always check the Greek because you've got to look at what it's written in originally and how it gets translated. So Young's literal is in the Hebrew there. So you just go to Orthodox Jewish Bible, which makes the bear Orion in the Pleiades in the chambers of the constellation on the south side of the heavens. Now, of course, Jerusalem is in the northern hemisphere. It's not in the southern hemisphere. So that would definitely signify Pleiades to me. But again, Pleiades are not. They're not. Hang on a second. Let me just go to the name Pleiades. Is not the original name. That's Greek. So where did the Pleiades get its name? I mean, you can go to
Your
Wikipedia.
share screen isn't there.
I know. I'm about to do that. Because what I'm going to go into next is my first UFO experience as a kid growing up in Berkeley, California. In 1968, when I see this flying saucer and there's pandemonium on the streets and it's super clear. It's like the Billy Meyer UFOs that were from Pleiades, and it's that clear. And in the following weeks, we move into this new house in the Berkeley Hills. Because my mom divorced my dad and we moved in with our new stepfather, who was David Cooper. And I'm having these dreams and these experiences of these Nordic looking beings. They don't use the name Pleiades, by the way, with me. They showed me the cluster of stars and that's where they're from. And then they showed me the inside of their craft. And they showed me this counter-rotational vortex field drive, which is like my cube behind me here. This is a counter rotational scalar energy generator, and which is where my inspiration comes. And again, they were very friendly, very kind. My body was paralyzed, so I was panicking. And I'm a kid. I watched Star Trek. I told my mom about it, but she doesn't really know what to do about it. There's no one to talk to. I mean, you're a kid, right? So when you look at Pleiades, to the naked eye, you can see 6 of these. So that's 5. And in this upper corner, you really only see 1. But of course, there's more than 7. They just the biggest, brightest ones. It's known to be a group of 6. In the ancient world, it was really a group of 6. But Pleiades is, as it's named, origin of the name, the name Pleiades comes from the ancient Greek, right? So the Greeks, of course, many of the early apostles actually wrote and spoke Greek, which is probably why the first identifiable copies of testimony were written in Greek, but they weren't actually written by the apostles. But we don't really know that because in the Gospel of Thomas says, I wrote these things down as the Master spoke, but we don't have Thomas's original copy of the Gospel of Thomas, right? For example. But we also know that storytelling in those days, because people were illiterate by the thousands and thousands were illiterate. If you understand the history of literacy in the Roman Empire, the storytelling was oral and it was done perfectly. It wasn't a lackadaisical thing. So to understand that Pleiades comes as a name from ancient Greek, we don't know what the ancient prophets named that cluster. So that's why in Judas, there's no reference to the word Pleiades. But we don't really know, because each culture has a different name for it. And the way it was written, when I read the original Judas when it first came out, and it was very clear it was a cluster of 6. I don't know what the translators keep doing to this, and sometimes I wonder if they're messing it up on purpose. So again, to talk to an astronomer today, if there would be any life forms in this star system of these stars, then we would say no, because they're young stars and they're too hot. That doesn't mean anything, because temperature is based on frequency. And if you have a higher frequency life form, they don't experience heat and energy loss due to heat the way we would. We are designed perfectly to be in the temperate region of our star. So the Creator would make living beings be able to survive the frequencies of their stars, right? It's very, very limited, myopic of astronomers to think that everything has to have the Goldilocks zone where there's enough water and hydration. Yes, for us to migrate there and live there, that would be true, but it's not actually true when you understand temperatures and temperature differentials. So anyway, with that, we have my story of these Nordic looking beings appearing to me as a kid, and this is where they're from. And here you go. This is the Nebra sky disk dated 1600 BC. Cluster of 7 dots in the upper right hand portion is believed to be Pleiades. Again, believed to be Pleiades because it wasn't called Pleiades. And I found it interesting,
Right.
when these beings as a kid appeared to me, they only showed me, it's like a hologram on what we would call a very modern TV screen inside the ship. This is where they're from. And they just seem to know me. They seem to, and this is before Billy Meyer, because Billy Meyer's case, he doesn't start photographing them until the early 1970s. I'd have to look in his book and see the exact date. So I saw them, according to Meyer, he saw them earlier than when he took the pictures. He was a younger kid, and it might have been around the same time that they appeared to me. I'd have to check with him on that, and that may be possible. But then what happens next is my whole life goes by and I never see them again until I develop the technology. And based on the radius, I actually want to show you this. The radius
So it's
of
the
any
70s for sure, though, right?
Oh, for my experience was 1968.
So his is the 70s, it says on here.
Yeah, I don't know,
In
but
the mid 70s, it says.
Well, that's when he takes the pictures. But in his book, when he was a younger kid, he saw them, but he didn't take pictures. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You see, and I was listening to an interview by Britt Elders, who her and her husband Lee Elders went there and lived on Billy's farm for a total of nearly a year of their life. And so they really knew the story well, that Billy was chosen by them because they calibrated his frequencies and they knew that they could work with him. Right. So again, remember, I want to go back to Judas, because Jesus is referring to heavens, which could be stars or planets. We don't know, because of the original Greek word can go either way, that are higher than the scope of vision that we currently had. And that's the model that I now have, thanks to my wife from the other side. We can see, just as Dante experienced, there are 9 more planets above the known planets that we're aware of, that are visible to us using our optics and our telescopes and our means of detection. But since the discovery of antimatter, it's very, very, very important that we can see that physicists hypothesize that there can be an antimatter solar system right in front of us, but we wouldn't see it. But yet it's there. So that's important, because in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus seems to be in this very it's quite a difficult language, because Jesus seems to be mocking Judas, and he seems to be impatient with him. He seems to be even impatient with his own disciples. Actually, his own disciples, none of them can look at him in this state of consciousness he's in. Only Judas. And that means they're not capable of seeing this vision that Jesus is talking about this higher harmony and order of a series of heavens that are beyond the scope of the vision of the human race. So,
But
and again,
I remember the verse from the Bible where Jesus says to Peter that it was God who told Peter what he saw. I can't remember the context of it, but as if because of what Peter said in that moment, something about the rock.
Right. And that could mean a lot, the rock, right? It's huge, because the original temple to worship God had to be an unhewn, uncarved stone. And I mean, I could get really deep into this, because our interstellar visitor, Oumuamua, which comes in an alignment with the August 21st eclipse, which is the first of the 3 eclipses in the triangle that I've lectured about, which is the original birth date of Jesus, according to the greatest studies done on his birth date, would have been August 21st in our calendar, which would have been about August 8th in the old Julian calendar at the time of Christ, thereabout. So that would mean, again, something you have to understand. It's our calendar is not absolutely perfect in measuring where the position of the sun and the Pleiades was on Jesus's ascension day. But if you go back in time, the calendar date will change, but that solar event doesn't change. So that would mean 2,000 years ago, it would be the same. It would be on his ascension day, there would be an arrow between Earth, the sun, Venus on the backside, and Pleiades. But what's interesting about what just happened is we just had a massive solar flare erupt far side that went right in an alignment to that arrow on Jesus's ascension day on the solar calendar. And the margin of error there is 1%. So you have a margin of error. It's not really error, because when you're tuning a guitar string or a piano, there's no such thing as 100% harmony. There's nobody that could do it. There's no piano that is 100% perfect in its sense of frequency. And we don't keep time 100% perfect. We can't, because our time, as I demonstrated before, mathematically deviates 20 to 30 minutes, and some years only 3 or 4 minutes every single year, and we don't know why. So remember this. This is about a harmony on Jesus' ascension day to Venus and the Pleiades, and again, planet 139. And so again, if you understand that in reference to the Gospel of Judas, we have a reference to a mysticism in early Christianity. See, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Acts of Philip, the Acts of John, all removed. And one of the modern arguments, not one of the old arguments, for the reason of removal is how old and when the manuscript first was discovered. But they don't understand that you were living in an oral storytelling civilization. It's not like today, where you had a large percentage of people who were literate and reading books. In fact, we're becoming more illiterate again. We're more illiterate now than we were 100 years ago. We actually are, because less and less people will read a book, because they're just reading tiny little tidbits all day, and they don't know how to focus and read a proper book. So storytelling was intentionally mastered. Like if I was a teacher, if I was an apostle or one of the 72 disciples of Jesus, I wouldn't send out other people to preach the Gospels until they could repeat the story of the Gospel to me perfectly over and over again, until they got at least a B plus or an A. And then I would say, okay, you're ready to go out and tell the story. Because if they wrote it down and your empire is illiterate, who's going to read it? But if you speak it to them, they will understand it. And that's how it was done. So if a gospel like the Gospel of Judas, let's look at its actual date, because this is really important.
When it was transferred from person to person, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the physical copy, but that's not. So they're saying it's late 2nd century. That's what the common Gospels were, late 2nd century. The only early gospel we have is Matthew's. When was the Gospel of John dated? And John did not exist at the time. It's early 2nd century, right?
I thought Matthew was 4 AD.
Matthew is the earliest actual gospel. When was the Gospel of Mark? Mark is really early, so that's actually Mark is 60, but that's the written copy, right? So when was the Gospel of Thomas? Thomas is dated as early as 60 AD and as late as 140, which is mid 2nd century, right? When was the Gospel of Philip? Philip is 2nd or 3rd century. Philip is dated 3rd century, but that's the physical copy, because the Romans were burning the physical copies, and the only way it could survive is through the mastery of oral storytelling. See, it's not like today you come up with a book called, let's just say you come up with Dune as a book. When Frank Herbert came out with Dune, and I remember reading it when it came out in the very beginning, as a kid, as a teenager, and you go, okay, we didn't know this was going to turn into a major motion picture. And the major motion picture, what does it do? It's nowhere near as good as the book. It's nowhere near as good as the book. So that means through storytelling, we have actually changed the story a little bit. And we've lost really incredible elements in the movie. But then the movie's a lot of fun. So when you have, this is what I'm kind of saying about myth, right? The Pleiades as a myth, the story of Billy Meyer and his, I mean, I have all Billy Meyer's photographs in high resolution, but I don't have real permission to share them right now on my screen. And I've studied the images, and I know that most of them are not fake. They're not fake. And that's the way I know that as a photographer, is if I take a picture of this quarter really close, you see the fine details, right? And I put this up in the sky and I say this is a flying saucer. To a camera lens, if something is close to the camera, I'll have really good fine details. But if I take a picture of a 20 or 30 foot boat and on the water, and I take a picture of it with Billy Meyer's camera, which is an Olympus camera, and using 35 millimeter film, and I use the same film as him, and I take pictures of that boat 5 feet from the camera, 10 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet, 300 feet, I can see the loss of the fine detail. And that means that Billy Meyer's UFOs, because they lack fine detail, they're really far from the camera, and that means they're really freaking big. And that means they're not a little toy model hanging on a string. They can't be, because if they were a toy model on a string, and some of the Meyer photographs were toy models hanging on a string, and it was done on purpose. It was all done on purpose. And Jim Delatoso, who's a special effects guy who was involved in the Meyer case, told me the whole story. It was done on purpose because they wanted to see the difference between what would be fake and what would be real. And the fake photos got mixed up with the real ones and destroyed the story, because people said, oh, those are fake. They're models. And they were. And so that's how you know the difference. So if something is a I remember as a kid building hot rod models about this big, and I hang it on a string in my bedroom and I take a picture with a 35 millimeter camera, I got really good fine details. But if I take the model this big and put it at 100 feet and take a picture of it and then I blow it up, I don't have any fine details. And then at 300 feet, I have less. And the Meyer craft lack fine detail that should be there if they're close to the camera. So which means they are really big. He's a one-arm guy. He lost one of his arms in the war. And there's no way the guy could have done this. He could have faked it. There's just no way. And because I saw the same thing, in a way, I'm an eyewitness because my story is earlier than his. I'm not older than Billy Meyer. I was born in 1961, so I'm 63 this summer. But Billy Meyer was born, he's like 90-something now. And so what you have is the creation of myth. And one of the ways, what's beautiful about a myth is so powerful in our culture, we build temples around myths. I mean, the early Greeks built temples to the Pleiades. They built temples to the stars. We now know about Göbekli Tepe that they built these temples to modulate and follow the rising and setting of the star Sirius in the southern horizon. We know this. So when a myth is an unproven story, and in a way, the Gospels are unproven stories, so they're mythic, but they're so powerful that a whole religion forms, and a whole congregation forms, and a whole series of rituals form that bring people together every Sunday to come together and argue and debate and also praise and worship a myth. But that doesn't mean a myth is not true. So when I call Christianity a myth, it doesn't mean it's not true. I had my own experience of meeting Christ blinding like the sun, and I fell upon my face crying my eyes out in the presence of the Son of God. But does that mean it's true? I can't prove it to another person, but it proved it to me, and it changed me forever. But I'm not like an ordinary Christian. I want to know the truth. I read everything so I can get a perspective. Does that mean I believe every single Gnostic gospel I read? No, but I do believe most of it. I do believe we've been duped. I do believe we don't know the real story. And I believe there was extreme female prejudice too, because every Gnostic gospel that glorified a woman was removed, every single one of them. And the Acts of Paul and Thecla is one of the most miraculous things I've ever read about a woman who was a follower of Christ through Paul. And it should have been included in the book of Acts, but it makes her so special. Thecla is so special that it makes her appear as an immortal goddess, and you wonder why Jesus wasn't the same. So they remove it. And believe me, they did a really good job at removing all the women. And what are the seven sisters in the Greek mythic portrayal of the seven stars? They're all women. And of course, that would get demonized. Of course it would, because there are illuminated women who are mythic characters, which means they might be true. That's what's so wonderful about a myth. Is Star Wars is a myth. It actually might be true. It might have happened somewhere in a galaxy far away. Like when you get into powerful myth transforms our culture. It transforms everything that we are. The Lord of the Rings is now mythic. Star Wars is mythic. Dune is now mythic, because you see that it could be true. But when you see these gospels and you read them and you understand the storytelling preceded the physical, it's almost like the physical publication of, for example, the Gospel of Philip, which pretty much proves Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene and that they had children. Well, of course the church had to get rid of that. Of course. But the thing is, this is where myth is the most mysterious, is we decide what to believe. We, the people, decide what to believe. And we give Joel Osteen his $50 million a year salary because all his congregants believe, Joel is telling the truth about Jesus, and he deserves to live in a mansion and drive Lamborghinis around. See, we're the ones who do that. We built up the Roman church because we gave them our money, because they convinced us that they were the authority of Christ on earth. But when these gospels started emerging and were being translated in major American universities, at Princeton, at Claremont, like all American major universities worked on the translation of the Gnostic Gospels. And if you talk to the people who translated them, like Elaine Pagels, I don't think Elaine Pagels think that these things are just made up. It's so logical. The reason they were buried in the sands is because to put out the fires of all these Christian cults that were competition to the Roman Empire's autonomy over the people's beliefs. So what I say to people who look at the Meyer story, look at the Palladian connection, my personal story for me, and my personal story for meeting Christ in person, 7 times I've met him. I've met Mary Magdalene 3 times. I've met the Mother Mary at least 7 times. That's true for me. It doesn't have to be true for anybody else. I'm convinced because it's what they made me feel inside. It's not just the visual, right? It's not just the visual. It's what they do to your soul on the inside when you see them. And that's where I was the most impressed, because there's no dream I've ever had in my life that could do to me what Jesus did to me when he appeared to me. I can't conjure up inside of myself a vision that equals the magnitude of the love and the bliss and the unnameable qualities that transmitted from Christ into me. I can't duplicate that. So for myself, I say I had an authentic vision, but you see, and that's another interesting thing about a lot of the Gnostic Gospels are records of experiences the apostles or an unnamed or unknown disciple had in the post-Easter era, the original Easter. So the 40-day window where Jesus is appearing to everybody is when all of these Gnostic Gospels stories emerge. And then when he ascends after the 40 days, and we now know there must have been a perfect alignment to Venus in the Pleiades. And again, that has to be star checked with an astronomy software, but I'm pretty sure we're accurate. That we really have a completion for Jesus to say that each one of us is from a star, and then we're going to return there. And again, the word for star and planet in the Greek, in the book of Revelation, for example, can interchangeably be the same. So it could mean we're from a planet. You see what I mean? And that we're just visitors here. And we're hanging out here in these bodies, and then they get old, and eventually, they break down and they die, and then we're released. And the word heaven, which is Oranos, let me just show you this. Let me just show you the word. You got to see this because I can't just say it without showing it to you. The Greek word for heaven is in the Bible. Or Oranos. And Oranos, Uranus mythology. Okay, let's go to this. Let's just look at this, because this is very challenging for Christians, because English doesn't exist yet. It does not exist at the time the Gospels are written. There is no such thing as English. English shows up 500 years later. So in Greek mythology, Uranos, sometimes written Uranos, Uranus, is the personification of the sky. Personification means it's an actual deity. And one of the primary Greek primordial deities. And Uranos creates the Cyclops, and which is really kind of a gross looking creature, an imperfect kind of creature, and then creates the Titans. And the Titans, of course, are the parents of Zeus. And the Titans give birth to Zeus, who gives birth to a number of gods and goddesses who then create the human race, physically create the human race. Now remember, your Bible is written in Greek, and the word heaven appears 278 times in the original Greek. So why is that? Why is that? Why doesn't the word for heaven actually just mean paradise place or super paradise planet somewhere? Why does it refer to a God who is a creator God? Because if you read your Gnostic, the Apocryphon of John, which is known as the Secret Gospel of John, Jesus appears to John after he's resurrected. So again, he's in that 40-day window somewhere. And he shows John that we were physically created by a whole number of demigod goddesses. There were a team of gods and goddesses who worked on the ear, on the eye, and they were fashioning the Adama, the first human. But the real God, the supreme God, is watching. This is what Jesus is telling John in this. And why does that get rejected by the church? Because the book of Genesis, the way we interpreted Genesis, remember, we're missing Genesis completely. We think we were physically created by God, but we actually are, but it's done in secret, because in the gospel of the secret gospel of John, the Apocryphon of John, the supreme God is watching. And when the demigods finish fashioning the human, which is very similar to what Zechariah Sitchin interpretation of the ancient Sumerian clay tablets say, that we were fashioned by a number of gods and goddesses as well. So Jesus is confirming the ancient Sumerian tablets, except for one difference. The supreme God then plants a luminosity of God's self in every one of us. So in a way, the real God is the one who created our luminosity. And the word in Greek is epinoia. And there's epinoia and pronoia. The pronoia is really the luminosity of God. The epinoia is the seed of light, which is God's spirit is placed in every one of us. So then what animates us from within is really from the supreme God. And we outsmart and outshine the demigods who created us physically, and they become enraged. And they cast the human race to the lowest region of matter, it says in the Apocryphon of John. Remember, this is Jesus speaking. But because the scholars are not reading Genesis correctly, because Genesis is the same. There is a number of gods, because the word for God in the original language of the ancient Hebrew for Genesis is, what is it, Churros? It has two different names. It's
Elohim, and Elohim is plural.
Elohim is plural, but then there's
the root of Elohim is Elah, E-L-A-H.
Yeah. So
and then there's Jehovah, of course.
Well, it's not. There is no J, so it's unpronounceable. And the Tetragrammaton,
YHWH.
Yeah, which is not a person, which is the infinite God. So remember, you have the infinite God, and then you have a plurality of gods and goddesses. You have the feminine and masculine, and then the Adama is being created and the Eve are being created, but it's not, the physical part of it isn't being done by the supreme God, but yet it does finish the job, because when God breathes God's spirit, which is the same as Jesus saying in the Apocryphon of John, the epinoia is planted in us, we therefore become God-like, and that we outshine our physical demigod creators, so that we have this quality in us, even though we suffer, which again is confirmed in the Gospel of Judas, that we can go higher than the angels. We can go higher than them. That's hard to believe when our bodies get cancer and die. I mean, we're going to die of something here, right? That's kind of hard to believe, but it's when a person gets illumination, when you experience real illumination, you understand that that's your real self, that's your real body. This shell, which used to be a kid running around San Francisco when I met these flying saucers, and the Pleiadians started appearing to me in dreams, and I couldn't tell my stepfather, I couldn't tell my mom, I told my brothers, but it followed me for the rest of my life, which then it becomes mythic, right? So science can't explain how anybody could live in a young star system like that because of temperature, but then you have the Billy Meyer story, and then you have other people having stories about the Pleiadians. And I think when we leave these shells, these organic bodies orbiting around this 4.5 billion year old star, and we see that we still exist and we're still alive, we'll realize maybe that all things are
Maybe
possible.
they've just found a way and we just haven't figured out the way they found.
Well, I don't know if any star system has figured out a way to make a permanent body, but the spiritual body that we are is still physical. It still has substance. It still has substance. Like when I saw my mother appear beside the bed on the morning of January 6th, which is the date of the Capitol insurrection, which is Christmas. And let me show you this. I posted this on Facebook, and people think I'm lying. I can't even believe this. January 6th, Orthodox Christmas. Okay. The Greek Orthodox celebrate on January 6th. There it is. That's their Christmas, right? Armenians celebrate Christmas on January 19th. There are some Orthodox celebrate on the 7th. Christmas on January 7th is Russian Orthodox. Greek is the 6th. Okay, so I'm not making this stuff up. And I showed you why that is, because 3 days, remember, Jesus spoke about the 3 days and 3 nights. And the new sun, which ends on the 22nd of December, reemerges 3 days and 3 nights after, but 3 days and 3 nights after the perihelion. So you have winter solstice and you have perihelion, and both of them have different alignments. The perihelion is the end of the elliptical rubber band and its alignment to the North Star, and then the new sun on December 25th, which is 3 days after the winter solstice, is the solar calculation, and so you have a window of 2 dates that are both celebrations of the new sun, and they're both the dates for Christmas for the 2 churches on the planet, and that's why your Easter in both churches are on the 2 ends of the sine wave, and that's why your Ascension Day for Jesus is also doing the same thing. And then we have the alignment to Pleiades. In fact, right now, let me just end this in a minute here with the sky live, because the sun is about to go down. And there you go. So our Pleiades now are, I'm just going to finish with this. Present, share screen, window. I use the Sky Live, so go to the Sky Live, and there you are. The Pleiades now are to the right of the sun, and on the Ascension Day of Jesus, they were right up here, right above the sun. And when the solar flares started, they were just to the left of the sun. So there, if I draw a circle around the sun right now, Pleiades, Venus and Jupiter were perfectly paired. Yesterday it was, and the day before, they were just right next to each other. So again, this particular year, on the window of the period of Jesus's ascension, you have Venus, Jupiter, and Pleiades in this window of time. And now Pleiades will slowly drift away from our alignment to the sun, and some other star system will come into alignment with the sun. So there you go. Again, the part and the reason I wanted to do this today is because we're seeing a connection to the Gospel of Judas and the reference to stars, and Jesus showing Judas a higher order of heavens that is beyond what is visible, because in the Ptolemaic world, the ancient Greek world, the known planets were the harmony of the order of the heavens of the gods. They were. So Jesus is saying there's a higher order above. And that higher order above gets confirmed by my wife's afterlife experience. So
We
with
should
that,
ask a linguist to confirm that the star versus heaven being a better
no,
translation.
I've gone into the Greek. It's really interesting. There's a couple of words, like if you go into Revelation, if you really read Revelation correctly, and you read when the scripture that says Jesus will be coming. Okay, here it is.
Like, what if you just went in and replaced all the words that are heaven with the word star and see what happens?
No, because it's the same. It can go. There's two different words. One is fixed stars and one is non-fixed. But so what did it say that Jesus will come in the clouds? Jesus comes in the clouds. Revelation. Every eye will see him in Revelation 1:7. So watch this. I'm going to go to Revelation 1:7. Greek analysis. And I'll pull it up for you. Here we go. I'll show you how you do this. Okay, here's the Greek analysis, the Revelation 1:7. Okay, he is coming. Here's the Greek word, and it doesn't actually say he, does it? This Greek word, which in English says he is coming, it means come, which come to you, who come, came, past tense, and they came. These are the most common usages in the Bible to that Greek word.
Do you remember what I was saying? Remember what I was saying, that it's the tense that's changed often?
See how they change it?
Came to, come to. Yeah.
So with the clouds, Nephilim, on the clouds, with the clouds. So it could be with the clouds or on the clouds. Very interesting, right? And we'll see him. Okay, him is.
And doesn't cloud represent angel too?
I know there's a lot of possibilities. Let's go to cloud. So cloud is on the clouds, with the clouds, with the clouds. Again, you see references in the Old Testament to God, on Mount Sinai. A cloud came down over the Sinai, right? All the tribes of the earth. And the word for earth is not Gaia. It's the salt of the earth, not the earth. On earth, earth, meaning earth, on earth. So, again, when you look at the Greek, you get challenged a little bit but there's another phrase where Jesus says, it's actually in John. Jesus refers to the second coming. Watch. And every eye will see him. Refers to every eye will see him. Okay, this is the one that really got me. It's not Revelation. Where is it? Where is it in John? John 18:33. Okay. Watch this. John 18:33 to 37 is no, this isn't what I'm looking for. There's a reference point where Jesus says, where in John does Jesus refer to his return? Because it when you read it in Greek, Matthew 25. I'm finding. I'm not finding the right one, but I remember looking this up in Greek, and what it really said is something will be coming in the sky that every eye will see, and it looked more like it was a planet. But probably because the early, again, Ptolemaic understanding of the solar system is that we know where especially the visible planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus and Mercury are visible. We couldn't understand that there's something that's going to be coming in the sky that we're going to see that isn't going to be Jesus like a hologram flying towards us, but it's actually going to be a new planet that will appear. And I believe, again, as I demonstrated, there's 33 years between the Star of Bethlehem and the eclipse that occurred on the cross, because Jesus died at 33 years old, and it had to be perfectly timed, which is why Judas had to turn him in exactly on that date and that time so that he would be crucified on that date when the eclipse of planet 139 would happen. I believe that's what we're going to see. That's my prediction, is you're not going to see Jesus in the sky. You're going to see a planet, a heavenly body appear that we're not used to seeing, and it will be very bright, hence the Star of Bethlehem. And that's what we're going to see. Because when I read the original Greek on the actual scripture that I'm looking for, that's the way it really read. But it gets changed to mean that people think they're going to see him in the sky. Now, it's true, in what's called the Acts of Philip, Jesus appears in the sky shining like the sun during a huge miraculous event in Athens, Greece. And Jesus did say the event that you're waiting for will happen while many of the apostles are still alive. And that did happen when they were alive. He did appear in the sky shining like the sun. He did. But again, one of the reasons the church removes the Acts of Philip and the miracle of Jesus appearing in the sky like the sun is they want you to believe that's going to happen in the future so they can control the masses and say, you better follow us because he's coming, and he's coming in the sky. He's coming in the clouds and every eye will see him. But it already happened. And they removed it. If you go ahead and just Google the Acts of Philip, read it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It actually happened. So what's about to happen and where we're going next on this planet is mysterious, because the planet that caused the miracle of the sun at Fatima appears between Fatima 1 and Fatima 2, 33 years apart, and transits of Venus come in pairs that are years apart, and transits of Mercury come in pairs. It has to be the pairedness of a planet we don't know about yet, which is between Mercury and Venus, according to my math. It might be orbiting, 90 degrees to the ecliptic. I don't know, but I do know that throughout periods of history, we have seen this bright morning star. And it's even possible when Jesus refers to himself as the bright morning star in Revelation, he's not referring to Venus. He's referring to a new morning star, which is planet 139. And which is between the orbit of Mercury and Venus. And the windows for the harmony of that planet are demonstrated to be mid-October and mid-May. And we just crossed mid-May, and we all saw something pretty miraculous. We saw these beautiful colors and this enormous event on our sun in mid-May. We all did. So that would mean for this year, the next date to look at is lower mid to even upper October. That's what I would say. Something, I don't know what it'll be. I'm not going to say the second coming is happening at all, but according to this book, Peter Lemaitre, who decodes the Great Pyramid, this was published in the 1970s by a brilliant mathematician named Peter Lemaitre, and I find it interesting because his dates for 2025, 2024, by 2025, there should be a total collapse of the materialist civilization. There will be appearance in the sky of the sign of the Messiah on the 31st of October in 2034, which is 10 years from now. Notice it's October. His prediction, and he's not a psychic. What Peter Lemaitre does is he mathematically calculates every inch in the Grand Gallery in the pyramid in the ascending passage equals a period of time, and he tells you what's going to happen in that timeline. And it says here that October 21st, again, is upper mid-October. The Christos incarnates in the physical man the long-awaited messianic return. So 2039 is 5 years. That's 15 years from now. That's not very far. I hope I'm still alive. I don't know. My kids will be alive, but it does. Both dates are October. Both dates are October. And Lemaitre didn't know what I discovered, which is all because of my wife's death. I would never know about Planet 139 and the harmony of the order of the upper house of Dante's 9 higher planets and what the Gospel of Judas refers to as a higher order of heavenly bodies that we can't see. I would say that most likely what we're going to see is when this great planet becomes visible again, and it's been visible throughout history at these great intervals, and it's timed perfectly. So remember, Jesus has to get Judas to turn him in to be crucified on the exact date because Jesus knows he has a 33-year mission because the double transit of his planet, the first one was at his birth, the Star of Bethlehem, and the second one, he has to be on that cross at that hour. And so it's all timed. So Jesus didn't do anything wrong. He followed the orders of his master. You have to turn me in. That's what the Gospel of Judas says. And if the stars confirm it, if the order of the planets and the harmony of the order confirms it, it's true. It's no longer a myth. So if Lemaitre is right, we're only 10 years from seeing it in mid to late October. So hang in there. And if nothing happens this time, 2012, nothing really happened. The millennium, nothing really happened. The computers didn't all stop working. Then this is the last prophecy that I'll ever look at again on the exterior world. But in the interior world of what we can transform within us of who we are, that never ends. That never ends for me because the spiritual experiences we have, the experiences we have within are why the world is the way it is without. Everything you see out there came from in here. So if we don't transform this, that's not going to change out there. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks for listening. This video is posted on my YouTube channel, so you can share it with friends if you're interested. And I really appreciate you listening to this.
Thanks, David. Bye, everyone.